All right, you guys, we got cut off there, so I'm just going to start over and we'll get straight to the point, okay? Shabbat Shalom. Tonight's Torah story is called Parshat Shmini, and Shmini means eighth. And if you think about it, we have like 7 days of the week, 8, you begin again. So to put it simply, 8 represents a new beginning. And in this story, it is very much a new beginning. It's this initiation energy, okay? We just finished building the tabernacle. Now is the time for the Jews to go in and make the first offering on the altar. It's also the beginning of Aaron's path as priest. Okay, so I'm going to make 2 points about this story. The first point is there's a part of the story where Aaron's sons don't quite follow God's instructions as to how to make the offerings. They get too excited, they're too overwhelmed with bliss and awe, and they end up giving more offerings than were asked, okay? The moral of, and then what happens is they get consumed by the fire. So the lesson there is God's laws or commandments or universal truths even, okay? These universal laws are a science. They're exact. They're unchanging and eternal. And we as humans can't use our ego to try to find some loopholes in these laws or try to, redefine them or add on to them. They're already eternally perfect. And they've been set in stone, right? Like the tablets, the commandments, from the beginning of time. And so Aaron's sons go and they think, well, it's harmless. It should be good because we're giving more offerings. That's not the way that source operates. Everything is exact. We shouldn't do any more or less. We should do exactly what we're asked, just like that, right? And so they were consumed by the fire. And we don't know, if they were burned so that they could come back again in another life to try to get this thing right. Or maybe they ascended. Who knows, right? But the point is, and the Torah does this, the point is you want to reflect on this internally. And with your friends and family, you want to go deeper. The Torah leaves these questions open so that we can dive deeper every year. We were not created to be blindly obedient. Okay, I talked about this earlier. There are many definitions of the word Israel, and one of the most famous ones is God wrestler, he who wrestles with God, one who wrestles with God. And there's only one here. We're one with that source. And so what that's implying is that we wrestle with self to conquer lower aspects of self, to rise ever higher. We're here to have those internal conflicts, and then dialogues to move through it. We're here to ask questions, to be curious so that we can learn and grow. We were not created to be blindly obedient. So that's why these stories kind of leave these open-ended questions for us so that we can continue interpreting them in an infinite amount of ways. And there are many interpretations out there for you if you want to go deeper, and I encourage you to. So that's the first lesson I wanted to bring up within Parshat Shmini. It's about, we have to follow the laws. Oh my goodness, I hope we get through this video without being disconnected again. So when we write the Torah, it's quite the task, right? And in order for the Torah to be kosher, there's a group of people who oversee the process, as far as checks and balances, to make sure that it's exactly perfect. Because it should be just like that, not like Aaron's sons where they want to add a little something extra. You don't want to do that. The code is perfect as it is. And that's it. Okay, so that's the first lesson. The second lesson in this story that I wanted to talk about was when Aaron is supposed to go up to the altar, Moses actually invites him and kind of guides him into the process. And you're thinking, Moses wasn't the one chosen to be the priest. Aaron was. So he already knows how to do this. He already knows what to do. Why is Moses having to guide him and invite him into the process? Well, Aaron was carrying guilt because if you remember a few stories ago, we spoke about the golden calf. He participated in that act and he was feeling guilty. He was feeling shame. He didn't feel worthy of stepping up to the altar. And so Moses guided him. Moses invited him. And when you remember that it's important to interpret each story in the Torah and really all things from a oneness perspective, we can then remember that these different characters are representing different parts of the one self, different parts of our own mind, our own consciousness. So Moses having this experience with Aaron is like our higher self calling on our shame and saying, hey, let it go. You still have to fulfill your purpose. Don't let that feeling of unworthiness, that feeling of guilt or shame keep you from doing what you came here to do. Come on, open up your heart, step up to the task. And that's the thing, our shame and guilt does that to us. It takes up space in our awareness, where instead that space could be filled with light and trust, more truth, more love. So the lesson there is, it's time to invite ourselves to let go of that shame or guilt, to see where we may have been inhibiting ourselves. We may have been limiting ourselves from living our truest purpose, from taking on responsibilities that are a part of our purpose because we haven't felt worthy, perhaps because of something that happened this past year, or maybe even in our childhood, or maybe in a past life, who knows? But the more important thing is to examine where in our lives we've been holding ourselves back. How can we move out of fear, shame, guilt into love, trust, surrender, openness of heart and mind to live out our purpose, to take on those sacred responsibilities? So it'd be really good tonight, this Shabbat, and in the week ahead to have these conversations with family and friends about, where are we giving too much or too little, for example, in regard to the first lesson we spoke about, or where am I limiting myself? Where have I excused myself from taking on certain responsibilities because I didn't feel worthy? I didn't feel like I could be a leader. And how can I get rid of that? How can I recognize that there is a leader in everyone, and it's an archetype that I'm ready to tap into, because we all need to do that. We all need to tap in to that inner leader. Because even if you think, oh, well, I'm not leading in any big way. Oh, but you are, because every human and every being who comes across you, who comes into your presence, is receiving that information from you. And if you have that leader archetype activated, you will inspire in some way. You will inspire the world. You will inspire a child. Anybody. That leader in us is so necessary to be activated, as well as all the other major archetypes, right? So check out my book, The Royal Path, Activating the Archetypal Alliance Within. Private message me if you're interested. So have these conversations and dialogues with your friends, with your family this Shabbat and in the week ahead. And know that when you're having these conversations about these particular themes right now, two things are happening. You're maximizing our collective potential to multiply the light, which is our mission, which is the whole reason why we're here, to bring heaven to earth, because inclusivity is a virtue. When we're doing it together, we can do more, as long as we're meeting in that same space, right? So that's number one. Number two, the second thing you're doing when you tap into these codes, these particular pieces of wisdom at this particular time, you're actually not just talking about it, you're simultaneously aligning your energy, mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, with the cosmos and with all of nature. Because these stories are meant, they're codes that are meant to get you attuned to the current frequency, in particularly involving the part of the cycle that we're at within the greater cycle of life. So the season that we're in, where the stars are at, where nature is, we align with those forces. When we tune into these stories, when we dig deep, the deeper we dig, the further into alignment with the forces of nature and the cosmos we move. Okay? So if you want that attunement, have these talks with your family and friends. It's as simple as that. Read the story of Shmini. And if you can read it in Hebrew, bonus points, because those words are sacred frequencies. It's nothing like English. They're actual spells, codes. So awesome if you can. If not, read it in English. Read it in whatever language you can. Tune into the feeling of the story. Really hear the messages behind the words and meditate on them. And share that experience with friends and family to be sure that you maximize the potential for multiplying the light in this world, so that we can get to the new world, Olam Haba, or the world of light, the world to come, faster, with greater strength, with greater trust, with wider open hearts and minds. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thanks for joining for this story. If you want to get into these Torah stories, I've got many of them on YouTube and on Instagram, Facebook. They're all here. So just type in the name of the Parsha on my page and it'll pop up. We do these every week. So pretty soon we'll have the whole Torah complete. So join us on our journey. Feel free to add yourself to our private group, Shabbat Crew, so that you can stay on top of these mystical, Kabbalistic insights every week. Have a meaningful Shabbat, you guys. I love you. Shabbat Shalom.